Hello, how are you? I wanted to make a video because writing it all in text would have taken a long time. So, what I have is a summary. I de identified the information, it's not associated with your name or your email or anything like that. So, even though this is a public video, no one will see it. Um, so, interesting thing. I was convinced that we had the perfect database for finding methodology, and I'll show you what happened. So, in our databases, when you're looking at psychology, psychiatry, mental health, experimentation, all sorts of things like that, we have a database under the discipline of psychology that is perfect for it, and it's widely used, and you have the ability to search for um, methodology. It's called PsycInfo from the APA. And when you go to that database, you'll have to log in with your UView network ID. You'll be prompted for that. If you go to the advanced search, I was so excited about this, and then I was like very disappointed because it didn't work. For example, I'll do a different search for you. But in the second one, you could do, let's see, what do we have? Randomized control trial. For these databases, if you have more than one keyword, it's a good idea to put it in quotes, and then those keywords stick together. So it'll look for randomized control trial instead of randomized here and control and trial there. It'll get messy. But if you put it in quotes, it won't do that. And here's the thing I was so excited about. In this database only, you can search through methodology. And what I found is that no one in the psychology field was putting their methodology in there, or they were calling it a clinical trial or something like that. And so you could see, I did a search and there was no results found. I was just shocked. There has to be something that's a randomized control trial. So let me show you what I did. And this will work in any of the databases that you like to use. Let me show you a list. If you go to research guides right here, there's a list of databases under psychology and social sciences and things like that. Or if you're familiar with some databases and you like those databases, this is another way of going. But there's a guide for psychology in here. This takes a while to load. Takes forever to load. Okay, I'm going back. You get the idea. There's a guide there that has a list of those databases, just like we had. But are you familiar with the abstract? So you have the title of the article, and then you have a brief description, which is the abstract that tells you kind of like what's going on. If you search in the abstract instead, whoops, let's close that. If you search in the abstract instead, it's a lot more reliable. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it's a lot more reliable. Yay, 67. So some of this might be like how addiction is formed and things like that. So what I would recommend that you do is what are different ways of a randomized control trial being named? Sometimes it's called a clinical trial. But if you go to the open web and you see what is a randomized control trial, they might call it a clinical trial. There might be different names for it. So I would, yeah, there's another one where they call it a clinical trial. So if randomized control trial doesn't work, you can just call it clinical trial or control trial. How do you do that? You can do an or in there. And in more quote marks, I can say, oh, I want randomized control trial or clinical trial. Now, this is something you would have to argue with your professor or instructor. But we'll go from 67 to probably hundreds. Oh, thousands. So is a randomized control trial a clinical trial? Are they the same thing? That might open it up for you. You were also interested in therapy. So how do we get around with that? In another part of the search, you can type in therapy, and then here you see more of these or statements. See, in the social sciences in particular, therapies are often called an intervention. So an intervention would be a tool or a medicine or maybe a combination of things that they'll give a name. So if you're looking in that, you can do title if you wanted to narrow it down specifically, or you could just have it search through everything. So we have 1,138, and now we added therapy or treatment or intervention with addiction as our top word. Oh, it only goes down to 1,000. So are there specific interventions or therapies that you're interested in? This is where you could start, you could put some of those in here. So if you found one, so I know one is cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm going to put that in quotes. So if you wanted, the psychologists and scholars are going to be looking at all sorts of different ways of working with addiction. And if you know the name of one of them, you can narrow down that way. So there's 100 on that one in particular. Okay. It looks like my face just froze. So send me questions if you run stuck on anything, and I am happy to help. Have a lovely weekend.